Our three panellists are Victoria Richardson, the Chief Operating Officer at Miko. Victoria's worked with payment and identity technologies for more than 20 years and is experienced in business development, product marketing and strategy consulting. She's advised a range of companies from startups to major banks, telcos and government bodies. I'm sure she has some dirt on the lot of them. Please welcome Victoria. Then we have the Customer Digital Identity Product Manager at NAB, Lyndon Dawson. Lyndon is an identity industry practitioner and international speaker on human rights, privacy, user experience, ethics, and emerging identity and access management technology. In her current role at NAB, leading customer digital identity initiatives, Lyndon is an optimistic yet pragmatic approach to solving those problems. And as a NAB customer, I have to say it's working. So please come on up, Lyndon.
Thank you. So pleased to do that.
Yep, big fan of what NAB's doing in that space and keeping my money safe. And finally, Sam Chander is the Director, Digital Identity Engagement at the Department of Customer Service. She has passion for the digital economy and realising community benefits. Sam is committed to connecting the private and public sector colleagues to harness the incredible opportunities and solve complex challenges in the digital age. Well, she has an MBA in corporate finance, extraordinary experience, and is now at Digital New South Wales. So obviously you'll have a couple of Victor Dominello stories along the way. I love this guy, our former New South Wales Government Minister. He retired from politics earlier this year, but he has been driving the push, not just in New South Wales, but nationally to make it happen. Please welcome Sam to the stage. Over to you, David. Dictate to all of us. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, and thanks for the generous introduction. I really appreciate it. So we have quite a lot to cover in this session. Was anybody in the ACCC session this morning about fraud and whatever? It's like, oh yeah, that's right. So I didn't catch a name, but a woman from the back asked a really interesting question. She said, you know, how do you help us because we're trying to onboard customers. I'm paraphrasing slightly, but this is what she said. She said, I'm trying to onboard customers in a country where everyone's identity has already been stolen. I mean, basically, you are, without a shadow of a doubt, the world centre of data breach. I mean, this is why you're so interesting to people like me, because in Australia, everyone's identity has been stolen. So if you're a real business, how do you actually onboard customers in this environment? So we're enough talking about like the theoretical stuff. We're down at the sharp end now. So in this session, we're going to be talking about what's actually happening. And there's a lot of it. So I made a little list to get us started. So, 2 rum and cokes, 1 lime soda, 1... Oh no, that's 5 o'clock, sorry, yeah, that's the 5 o'clock one, sorry. 4:30, okay. Right, so let's start. Before we get... I want to make it absolutely clear to the people, this is stuff that's actually happening. Despite all the waffle this morning, there are people out there that are actually trying to solve this problem. Unfortunately, I've got 3 of them here. So I think we'll start on the New South Wales side, Sam. So if you wouldn't mind, if you could just explain and just make it clear to people what you're actually doing, what's actually happening to deal with this. So, and you're at the sharp end of that, so tell them what's going on.
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity. So New South Wales Government has actually taken on this exciting sort of stewardship role in this space to start building a digital identity solution. So as the last panel talked about, there is, you know, this embracing of the digital economy. We're participating more and more to spend money and, you know, share our private information, unfortunately, as it's required to transact at the moment digitally, which is good news, except it's exposed us to a lot of cybercrime. So the impact on the economy in Australia has exceeded, of identity crime in particular, has exceeded $2 billion, and more than 1 in 4 Australians have been victims of identity crime. So I come from a part of a branch of Digital New South Wales, which is Identity New South Wales. And what we're looking at is we've got 2 really important initiatives. One is identity support. So that's about looking after folks when something goes wrong. So, you know, worst case scenario, there has been identity theft. So helping both individuals and businesses with remediation and restoration of identity, helping businesses with cyber breaches. So they've been a very, very busy unit since all the data breaches have happened earlier in the year, and even going back to last year. In addition to that, the Digital Identity and Verifiable Credentials program that we've kicked off is building a digital identity solution, which is actually a solution that is allowing customers to do the digital equivalent of the 100 points check. Adding to that also is a biometric component. So the customer gets a real-time photo verification. That photo is not stored in line with the principle of data minimization. So making sure privacy preservation is paramount in that process. Once that is established through the Service New South Wales app, you can reuse it again and again and again, instead of having to prove your identity and going through that 100-point check process transaction by transaction. So it's like a one-stop shop solution that we're aiming for. It is in pilot at the moment, and in parallel, legislation is being developed to support this solution as well. So that's where we are on our journey. Paired with this also is verifiable credentials enabled digital wallet. And that's really exciting because it will enable us to digitize a variety of credentials, anything from the birth certificate through other credentials like qualifications, your degree certificates, TAFE qualifications, anything and everything that you might have had in paper, so the driver's license and passport in the future as well. All of this in a one-stop shop that would enable sort of interoperability in a safe and secure way. And the two solutions paired together will allow for safe, data minimized transactions in the digital economy. And we are working with industry. So that's how I met Lyndon over here. So banking is part of who we'd like to pilot with in terms of know your customer. So I'm going to hand over. I can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. I was just going to jump in here. Thank you for that. And we have been working together on various opportunities, but one of the most exciting things, I think, for me is what we're working on at the moment at NAB is I'm leading NAB's participation in the Connect ID initiative. For those of you that aren't familiar with that, this is an initiative that's coming to market shortly. It's being led by the Australian Payments Plus group. It's really exciting, actually, because it's not what I call a Pinocchio project. You know, we've heard a lot of theory today, we've heard a lot of talking. This is coming to market in a matter of weeks. This is actually a digital identity solution that's going to create a whole new ecosystem, which is very exciting.
Can I talk? So both of you are bringing these things to market. You're already in pilot. Yours is starting in a couple of weeks' time. I mean, we've been talking about these things for years. So something has really obviously happened in recent times to tip things over. You know, I come from the sort of technology perspective, so I'm looking at the kind of digital wallets, verifiable credentials stuff. I mean, what is it, Vic, that's changed that means that these things are now possible?
I think one thing that's changed is the acuteness of the problem. So just a moment on the stats in Australia. The Office of the Information Commissioner put out some information just 2 weeks ago. So 47% of Australians have been a victim of a data breach, and 79% of those have experienced some harm as a result of that. And 29%, so that's almost a third, have had to change one of their identity documents. So it's a really acute problem. So I think that there is a burning platform. I think the other thing that has happened is there is increased awareness of standards and a much greater focus on standards. So picking up Nicholas's point, I mean, the reason standards matter is it gives you interoperability and it gives you scale. And at the moment, we get scale from platforms. You know, Facebook provides scale, Apple provides scale, but it's in a closed and walled garden. So I think the creation of that technology, the awareness of that technology, and then I also think the devices and the fact that everyone has a phone in their hand. So it's easy to imagine how you can have one of these verifiable credentials. It's issued to you by a university. One of the work we're doing in Europe is that the university issues the credential and then it's held in the bank wallet. And that's possible because there's interoperability between the wallets and the verifiable credentials, and that you can't take something from your Apple wallet and put it into your Google wallet. So I think the focus on interoperability and open source projects has really helped as well.
So really it's three things. It's the smartphone as the enabling platform, it's the standardization, which, on ISO and W3C and whatever has come along. And it's just fraud has just got so bad that someone's got to do something about it. And these things have kind of come together. And is this why NAB has decided to move forward with this?
Yeah, I was going to add, I think the other thing that's happened in Australia, of course, is there's what I call a rising tide of awareness around the value of your identity data beyond, there's always been an understanding of the value of your money, but suddenly people outside of this room and this conference, people are starting to understand the value. And so the use case I think, could refer to, I think Nick was talking about it in the earlier session, the Uber Eats delivery driver turns up, has your dinner and a bottle of wine. What happens when, and this is one of the things I love about digital identity as an industry, because this is where humans run into technology. So what happens to that digital, the driver at the door? Like, what happens if the person doesn't look like their driver's license? But also the other person on the other side is like, why are you scanning my driver's license? I just want my dinner. So this is this collision of humans and tech. And if you think as well about the way, for example, Uber reimagined ride sharing by taking cash completely out of the equation and getting the payment up front, we need to reimagine digital identity that way so that the delivery driver's not standing there with the bag thinking, I'm gonna get beaten up here.
But you could, to be honest, the Uber drivers are not, Mossad trained, anti-counterfeit document detecting.
No. How are they going to
know?
know?
You can show the Uber driver anything and he'll give you the bottle of wine. So.
Even in bank branches where they do face-to-face KYC ML, the studies show that people are too uncomfortable to say, I'm sorry, Lyndon, that doesn't look like you.
Right.
So I
you
think
don't
the
look a
technology-
day over 18.
Yeah. I agree with that. So.
I think the other
been
thing
a
is
while.
the under 18 is really important. I'm doing a lot of research into some of the online communities, and things like Roblox mean at the risk of bringing down the tone of the conversation. There's massive, the internet harms and child abuse from the fact that you cannot prove that you're under 18. That really matters. So I think there is the fraud, that's really important. There's awareness of data privacy and also the need to protect people online. That's massive.
Yeah, I think, we tend to use the sort of canonical, simple examples of getting some booze and, whatever, but the underlying societal harms from not having a functional digital identity infrastructure are colossal. And in a weird way, we're not even now really beginning to understand the magnitude of the damage there. So no, this has implications way beyond that. But just to go back to Lyndon's example, so Sam, so again, just talking in practical examples. So in New South Wales, what will actually happen? What's the actual user experience? Like the Uber guy turns up at the door, and what?
I think the Uber one's a great example. We did an actual pilot. It wasn't an Uber guy, but it was a proof of age transaction. So it's perfect. It's just in line with what you guys were talking about. And it was entirely end-to-end digital. So as part of this, the customer used the digital identity not to share their age or their date of birth, just a tick, a verification to that data minimisation principle, saying yes, they qualify for the purchase, and then proceed on to the cart, payment, delivery, etc. So this is what's possible, coming back to the technology.
So how does the guy at the door check the identity?
That's a really good question, and that is where, we were not able to go all the way through to that end, because that part of it is outsourced. And wasn't with the partner that was participating in the pilot. So it's a really good point and something we took into account in the customer experience. So you do have to think these things through for the longer term.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I also think one of the problems of these things, prior to the sort of pending standardization, all of these things are different. So, you know, someone's going to send you an email, somebody else sends you a text message, somebody else, you have to send them a text message. So customers are easily confused by scammers because there's no kind of standard. Like, if you go and tap your card in a shop, like it's like there's the symbol, and you tap it and it beep, like you know what to do, and we don't have any of that in identity yet. We need the
I
standardization.
think it's a really good point. When they rolled out card payments here, everyone knows protect your PIN, and there's no equivalent for it. And maybe Connect ID and the banks will focus on that, but there does need to be some sort of thing in your brain that you understand.
Okay, so we have things that are actually happening now, Connect ID, and other things. And as you've pointed out, in the Europe, you know, you've got EIDAS and various other things going on there. Those things are, and all of those things, by the way, in my opinion, serve to kind of highlight the wallet as the sort of central organizing principle of all of this. So I think we see the kind of digital wallet as being a really crucial component to all of these things. But for these things to work that you guys are talking about, they have to be part of an actual ecosystem. None of these things are going to work as a sort of standalone. Yeah. So I kind of want to push you a little bit on how those ecosystems are coming together. And there's different parts of that. So, you said a couple of times about privacy and what I would call selective disclosure as being. So one part of this is privacy, right? I mean, one thing this has to, but how does that work at the kind of ecosystem level? I mean, I'm going to get a verifiable credential that says I'm over 18. Where? I mean, where am I going to get this from? And this is NAB, right? Or?
Well, I think in the first instance, you'll get it from New South Wales. I think that's what really is exciting about what New South Wales is doing. They're solving that three-sided cold start problem, so they're going to create the market for verifiable credentials. But then in other markets, your bank is issuing you a credential. Right. So one of the use cases that we've been working on is your bank gives you an affordability check. So you go up to a rental property, and to your point, what is a verifiable credential? It's a standardized data format that is cryptographically verifiable. So your wallet is your user interface, it's the way that you present the information, and it's also a way for you to manage the keys. But from a customer perspective, you're presenting a QR code, someone scans the QR code, and they can go back and check the validity of that proof of affordability.
Right. So in our heads, it's keys and certificates and digital signatures and all this sort of thing. But to the customer, it's, you show this code, and right?
Or online, something else.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about this ecosystem thing a bit more. So when I was at NAB a couple of weeks ago, you guys were driving a design sprint with a whole bunch of different. And I thought that was really interesting listening to. So, could you just give people a sense of the different use cases that were being explored there? Yeah,
sure. So this actually started a little earlier in the year. We had a digital identity roundtable for folks that were sort of in the industry to talk about this, because one of the challenges that we have is that so at NAB, is that these little fraud micro moments, if you like, can happen around the place, and they start off little, and the fraudsters get in, and then they build and they build and they build and they build until eventually they show up at our front door with really quite sophisticated fake IDs or digital, inversions of somebody else, and they're applying for home loans and they're applying for credit cards. And so this is where NAB, the banks, we need to play a role in this, because actually we get hit pretty hard. And so we started off with a round table, and then we realised that if we worked as an industry, along with government, state and federal government, that we can lift the whole ecosystem up. And that led to this idea of a design sprint. And so we had academics and we had industry folks. So one of the use cases was around real estate, which is a particular passion point for me. I feel like the renter is barefoot in that relationship. They have to hand over everything, their bank statements, their DNA, their firstborn, everything, just to get a roof over their head. So the real estate use case, we looked at employee and, onboarding, e-commerce. We had one around disaster relief payments. There's a huge amount of fraud. I know in New South Wales, Service New South Wales, you guys were talking about there being a lot of fraud around payments to say, so, you know, someone in Lismore's up to their knees in rainwater and mud and they're screaming for their money, but a fraudster has impersonated them and run off with their insurance payment. And it's really problematic trying to link the identity and the payment together.
And you had some different industry briefings, right? With different.
We
so
did,
what
yeah.
kind of industries were you talking to?
Well, absolutely. As Lyndon referred to, real estate was number one on our list, and you know, you do have to give away all kinds of information, whether you're renting or even just seeing a property, and you may be not even successful in, you know, going with that one. And also, where does that information get stored? Where does it go afterwards as well? So that risk of that data breach. So real estate is top on the list, and New South Wales actually now has a rental commissioner for whom, you know, advocating for renters is really, really important. So the other is banking. So as Lyndon mentioned, you know, with disasters and emergencies, grant payments to both individuals and businesses, subject to a lot of fraud. So being able to establish connections with banking, and bank account could be a verifiable credential, so to make sure that we don't let the fraudsters get away with it and we can verify it's going to the right account and it is the customer's account. So we're also working with insurance, gaming and telecommunications, so a know your customer pilot that we're looking to kick off, you know, to purchase either a SIM card, something as simple as that, or much more higher risk like a mobile phone or a plan to boot. These are all things we're talking about and looking into.
So, I mean, the point is there's quite a wide variety of these use. I mean, we tend to talk about, you know, somebody opening a bank account, but that's actually, I mean, how often do you open a bank account? Like, it's not that. But the point is there's a lot of these use cases, and the infrastructure has to support all of them in order to become vibrant enough and to your point, you know, the standardization there's in place now to make that happen. Okay, so now let's finish up by talking a little bit about, is it really only 5 minutes? Is that a, oh, okay, all right. So it was just getting interesting, you know.
Yeah.
So, so let's talk a little bit about the future. But I should say, you know, I don't even know why I'm sharing this. The UK is, so if you're looking for a kind of a vision of an ecosystem, that you really shouldn't look at us, because this is true, by the way. So in the UK, just within the last, my wife got turned down for a savings account with the Yorkshire Building Society. I'll name and shame them, because her driving license had expired. As if being able to drive had anything to do with being able to save. Meanwhile, sadly deceased Russian warlord oligarch Prigozhin passed his UK AML checks with a copy, by the way, not even the original, of his mother's gas bill from St. Petersburg. So you shouldn't listen to us about this, is what I'm saying. You should listen to these guys about where it's going. So let's talk a little bit about the future. So Victoria, I know because you're involved in a couple of other things in Europe as well. I mean, what do you think about going forward? I mean, what's happening? So these are fantastic first steps. We're building an ecosystem. Australia's ahead of a lot of people. You've got trust frameworks, Connect ID. Where are we going next?
I think what's happening in this market is a really important platform for innovation. You know, was at a digital assets conference a couple of weeks ago, and everyone there says one of the problems with fraud and scams and lack of trust is we don't know who the owner of these assets are. Right. So I think it's a really, really important platform for innovation. I think it's fantastic that the banks have come together, and I think that the way that it's happening, it will enable people to build products and services on top of it. And we're very used to that with payments. You know, people talk about MPP as payment rails, and then you build apps on top of that. And I think that's really, really important. So hats off to the banks and Connect ID for doing that. And for New South Wales thinking about slightly differently about it, about the verifiable credential, because that will create a whole load of innovation. And just to answer your question really directly, some of the work that we're doing is verifiable credentials for logging into Guardian, which is part of the Hedera ecosystem. Guardian has a whole cradle-to-grave solution for creating tokens around carbon credits. It's a lot of greenwashing, and so we're using verifiable credentials to log in there. Back to your point about selective disclosure, you know, some of the information needs to be publicly discoverable on a ledger, and some of it does not. It needs to, first of all, you need to prove I'm an auditor, I'm accredited, and then the company who's created these carbon credits will selectively disclose more information. So I think it has broad application across the economy. Is the
so
short
it's about
answer.
amazingly cool stuff. It's not just about buying booze and opening bank accounts and stuff like that.
Buying booze and open banking is cool. I mean,
No,
buying
I know
booze is
that's
cool, but it's
I know that's what the
We have to
audience
start
is
somewhere,
interested in,
don't we? We've got to start somewhere.
That's right.
But isn't this the point, like Victoria? So for a lot of people in the audience, a lot of the problems they actually face, like the barriers to getting a FinTech off the ground, a lot of those problems are actually at root identity. I mean, it all boils down to the fact we don't have that infrastructure. So putting this infrastructure into place, it solves these immediate problems, but actually it's a platform for people here to build some really amazing stuff. I mean, don't you think it's really...
Yeah, one of my personal ambitions is that the passport is only used at the smart gates to get in or out of the country. I would love to see that happen, and that we use other ways and methods for all of those, what they call, you know, identity ceremonies or moments that we have in our day-to-day lives. Let's not use our passport for that.
And just building on that, and the digital driver's license is actually, well, the driver's license is an authority to drive, not anything else. It's, you know, seriously misunderstood at the moment as a form of identification everywhere. So that's I have a dream moment for us.
Fantastic. Well, listen, I hope you took away the points that I took away from this conference. So first of all, Australia's in a very unique position. You are actually doing something about this. We're not. Secondly, these things are happening now. This isn't PowerPoint they're talking about. These, I mean, basically, they're going to get fired if this doesn't work. So I hope you take this. No, but it's true. I mean, it's real stuff. This is real business.
It's not a Pinocchio
this
project.
Isn't PowerPoint.
What about the carrot? That sounds like a stick.
And they're building a platform which is going to transform the fintech businesses in Australia are all going to benefit from what these guys are building. So I hope you took on board. They were giving you, this wasn't, you know, this is real stuff. They gave you honest answers from a position of real informed and action perspective, which is really important to me. And so I hope you'll join me in thanking all of them for sharing that with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.